Hi, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and today we've got a great lesson for you today where we're going to be using user login and security rights to show you how we secure our sheets and users and giving them specific identities and specific security for each sheet and for each user. So stay tuned, it's going to be an amazing lesson. Alrighty, let's get started. Happy to have you here. The idea of this training is that we want an administrator or somebody who owns the workbook or is administrating the workbook to be able to give certain rights to the user. And those rights would be to either view a specific sheet and be able to edit it, or view it only without being able to edit, or not even be able to view it. So basically we want to give the ability to assign 3 different types of rights to a user. And we can do that with this specific table is going to help us. What I've done is I've set one column simply with usernames, and then you can change the usernames, add to it, and then the second column as a password. Okay, so we've got a password. We're going to be able to hide those passwords a little later. And then the idea is, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to assign individual rights for each sheet. So for example, if we want James to have rights, only viewable rights to sheet 2 but not editable, I want to be able to double click and do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to use symbols or icons to denote what type of rights that has on it. So we can do that by adding some different types of symbols, and we can do that in the symbol area. So we're going to go ahead and insert symbol, and under the font of WebDings, you're going to get a whole array of different icons and shapes. And one of the ones that we're going to be using is we'll use a unlocked. We'll use this unlocked here. I also have it down here. I want to use that one for when the sheet is open, when the sheet can be used. So we'll go ahead and insert that, and we'll need one of those. And then I also want to enter something when it's locked, when a user can view it but not edit it. So I want to find a symbol for that. So we'll go ahead and use this locked one here, also WebDings. And we're going to insert that. Okay, and then I also want to give the administrator the ability to assign the restricted access, which means that they cannot even view the sheet. And we'll assign a different symbol for that. So here we're going to go ahead and put in that. And also found on here about midway through, you can find basically the icon that we're going to use for unable. And it's going to look just like this here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and insert that. Okay, so those are the 3 types of access we want. So the unlocked is going to be for full access. The locked will be for viewable access but not editable. And this icon, the ban icon, or whatever you'd like to call it, we're going to use for not even viewable. Okay, and so remember, these uses the WebDing font. So what we want to do is we want to make sure the font is set for the entire table, because we're going to use that throughout this table. So we'll just go to home here, and then we'll change that font to WebDings. Okay, and now we've got the entire, so now when we use this, it'll be this font. And I also would like to assign a color. I want it to stand out, the differentiation between the icons. So I want a different color for each type. So what we're going to do is we're going to assign 3 different conditional formats. So we can highlight the whole table, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to conditional formatting, and we're going to go to new rule, and we want cells that only contain a specific value, a specific text. And what is that text? Well, for the unlocked, it uses a special code. For the locked, it uses a special code, and for this one, they use a special code. So we want to know what is that special code. So let's cancel that out. And the unlocked uses this D shape. Okay, this D shape. So we've copied and pasted that. And now let's go ahead and select the table again. We'll back into the conditional formatting, and we'll go ahead and add that new rule format that contain a specific text. And that text is going to be that D shape, okay? Now if that's selected, that's our unlock. So why don't we go ahead and color that? Perhaps let's go ahead and change the font to a green color, okay, green. That way it's going to stand out because it's green. Okay, and next we have our locked, okay, and that's that little I with the two dots, so we're going to copy that, okay? And once again, select the entire table, go to conditional formatting, new rule, format cells that only contain a specific value, okay, and then we'll go ahead and paste that I with the two dots above it, and we're going to set a color for this one too. Okay, and let's go ahead and put this, I'd like yellow or maybe orange. Why don't we go ahead and put it orange, okay? So we'll go ahead and click OK. Okay, and next we want the band color. We're going to make that red, so that way it stands out. We can easily see the different security rights. Highlighting the entire table. Let's go ahead and copy this. It's an X, so that's an easy one. We don't need to copy and paste that. So that is an X. And then a new rule. Format cells that only contain a specific text, and we'll just go ahead and put an X here, okay? And we're going to give this, assign this color, the font color, to be red. Okay, great. Very good. Now you can see we've got the three different font colors and for each shape, so it looks good. And what I basically want to happen is when a user double clicks on a specific cell, I want it to change. I want this icon to change. I want it to go in a process. I want it to go from unlocked to locked to banned, okay, or hidden. Let's just call this a hidden because she's going to be hidden. So I want that process to go on. And we can do that through VBA. So why don't we go ahead and go through the developer and click Visual Basic, Alt 11 if you want to use the shortcut keys. If you do not have the developer, simply go into the File and then go into the Options, and you'll go into the Customize ribbon and make sure you select the developer here, and then that will get you your developer tab here. So we'll go back into the Visual Basic, and now we have our Visual Basic up here. And the idea is here, once again, that if we double click on anything here, we want something to happen. So let's go ahead and invoke our double click. And now we have to do it for a specific range. We're going to start with G5. Actually, we're going to go through, let's go ahead and start with H5. G is going to be for a different purpose. We're going to use it for selecting all. It's going to be great, but we'll keep that separate. So H5 through M24. H5 through M24 is the range that we're going to be working on. So we go ahead and click on the admin sheet. That is the sheet that we're working on. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and select the worksheet. And we're going to use before double click. And we could use a selection change, but I'll show you the differences so you can see them. So we'll start out with before double click, which basically means when a user double clicks something, then we want something to happen. Okay, so let's go ahead and erase that. So we're going to use it. So we're going to, now we want to tell Excel, hey, if a user makes a change when there's a double click, this is what happens. So if not intersect, okay, and then target, comma, range, and what is that range again? Remember, it's H5 through M24, H5 through M24, okay, then end parentheses, is nothing, then, okay, and now we said, okay, if they double click, we want something to happen, okay, but what do we want to happen, okay? Well, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead, if it's nothing, okay, if it's this, right, which is the D, then we want something to happen. And we want it to go to the locked screen. If it's this, we want it to go to this. So basically we're going to go in the process of that order. All right, so let's go back into our VBA editor. We'll open this up a little bit. We can close this for now. And what we want to happen is we want to say if it's D, then change it to I. So it's pretty simple. So all we need to do is copy this little text there, and we just want to say if target dot value equals, and then we'll copy paste that D, then target dot value equals, and we're going to paste that I in there. Okay, let's go ahead and copy that. Okay, and then we'll paste that between the quotation marks in the VBA. And paste it in right there. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look and see how it's working now. If we double click on there, it changes. Perfect. Okay, so that's what happens. And now we can write some additional code. So we want to say if it's this, let's change it to this. So if it's I, we're going to change it to X. Okay, because that's going to change it for us. So we just have to copy and paste this code again, and we'll change the text. If it's going to be this I, so let's copy the I, right? Then change it to X. Okay, there. So now if it's this, it's going to change to this. So double click. Perfect. Okay. And now once again, if it's banned, we want it to go, if it's this hidden icon, we want it to go back to unlock. So we want it to basically loop. So we can do that with another copy and paste. So what we're saying is that if it's X this time, then we want it to change it back to the D. Okay. And there's one other condition that we have to write, which we will do, and that is if it's blank. Okay, so we'll go ahead and include something for that as well. And so if it's blank, I would also like to write something that basically states if it's blank, let's go back to D. So if target dot value equals empty, okay, then I want it to give it that unlocked. Then target value equals, and then we'll just say, let's say we want it to be unlocked. Okay, there. So now we've gone through every. So now if it's blank, okay, we can go ahead and now we got the unlock if it's blank. So because of that last line of code, and we do have to write a little bit more. One issue we will face if we don't write a little bit more code here is basically in this, when we change this to I, right, automatically, it's going to then see this and change it. It's going to keep looping through and looping through. So we just have to put things in a certain order and then exit. So we want to make sure that if it's I, let's go ahead and put it, if it's D, then we're going to exit the sub. Okay, the reason we doing that is it's going to loop if it doesn't. In other words, if it changes to I automatically, then it's going to go to this column and say, oh yeah, it's I, then change it to 6. So it's going to go automatically from, because it's going to go from this line, it's going to change it to I, right? And then right away it's going to say, oh, it's I, so we want to change to 6. So we basically want to say, once we've made the change, let's exit out of it. Okay, and we can switch the order. If we switch the order from X to I, right? If we switch this order, bring it up here, okay, now I will come last. So that's going to take care of itself for us. So that'll keep it from looping. It's kind of an order thing that's really going to help us. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look now at the code. All right, we can check to see how that's working. Double click on this. Great. It goes to locked, and then it goes to hidden, and then back to locked. Perfect. And if it's blank, should go to unlocked. All right, great. So now it's working. Now, I would also like to add one other ability. It takes a little bit of time consuming, especially if you have a lot of sheets, to have to double click on every single sheet. So what I'd like to do is give the user a ability to simply select them all, and it will change all of the sheets if we use this here. So that I want to do that. That's going to give the user a big time saver, and we can do that relatively easy with just a little bit more code. And in this case, it's not going to be range H5. It's going to be a different range. Okay, so we can just copy this one, although the range is going to be different. All right, in this case, we're working on with just column G, only column G, right? So we're going to change this to G5 through G24, okay, and make sure we close that with an end if. Okay, now what do we want to happen? Well, what we want to happen is if a user clicks anywhere in column G, we want the entire row, all the sheets within that row, to change based on the value as well in column G. So we can do that almost the same as we did above, except changing the range. So we'll go ahead and copy and paste. Okay, copy and paste what we've done before, and we'll just make some slight changes. Okay, if the target value equals D, then we're not going to change the target value. We're going to change this entire row. So we can do that with some code. Range G, okay, and the target row, because we don't know what the row is. So it's going to be whatever the row that the user's clicked on, target.row, okay, and the colon mark, because it's going to be a range, and through all the way through M, and the target dot row. Okay, and then we're going to close that out, and that should do it. We've got to put the being quotations here. Okay, so basically what it's saying is change the entire row G through M, change it to this, and then we're going to put a dot value in there because we want the value to be that. Okay, so it's the value in that range. Every value in that range we want it to change. And we can copy and paste this, okay, to the same thing for this. Instead of target value, we want the entire value of the range. Same thing here, and the same thing here. Okay, so what we're doing is basically saying if it's blank, our first one's going to be empty, then we're going to change it to all unlocked. So if we double click here, now they're all unlocked. If we double click again, they all go to locked. If we double click again, they all go to hidden, and then back to unlocked. Okay, so that's working really great. So that's a great way to change the security on all the sheets to the same. And then of course you can go in individually and change each one, but it's a nice way of changing the security for all the sheets at the same time. Great. All right, now we're going to go into writing another macro for this. All right, so what happens is when the user logs on, I want the macro to run through all of these sheets, right, and hide some, lock some, and show some. So we can do that with a macro. So let's go ahead and right click anywhere, insert a module, and then we'll go ahead and click the properties for this, and we'll change the name because I always like to name my modules. And then we'll just call this Workbook Security, or any name you want. As long as it's not the same as a macro, then you're okay. Okay, and we can close that out to save space right now. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start a macro here, and we can call it subcheck user, because we want this macro to do two things. We want once the user logs on, we want to check to see if that's a correct username and to see if it's a correct password. And if both of those are true, we then wanted to hide or show sheets according to their security. So we can go ahead and do this. First, we're going to have to dimension some variables. We're going to need to use a user row, and we'll define that in a minute. Sheet column, right? We want it to go through each of these sheets. So I'm going to define these sheet columns. Okay, so we're going to go through that as well. And so sheet column is going to be another variable. And those are both long, those are both whole numbers. And also sheet name as string. Okay. And then what I want to do is I want to specify, we're really only working with most of the things in sheet 1, which is the admin. Okay, sheet 1 here you see admin. So we're going to go with sheet 1. And just for your reference, when we're working directly on a sheet, you notice we don't need to reference. You see, we just start with range. We don't need to reference the sheet because we're on the sheet, but we're in a macro. We always have to reference what sheet. So in this case, we're going to do sheet 1, and then anything we do. So the first thing we want to do is dot calculate, okay? And that's going to calculate some formulas that we're going to put in right now. Okay, so we'll go through that, and basically what we want to do is we want to set formulas for our users so that we know what user and if the password is correct. So we can do that. We'll just slide over here into our workbook, and I have just some open names, and we're going to put the username and the password here for now, but we're going to shortly we're going to create a pop-up form to handle that. For now, we're going to go ahead and put in James and password 123, okay, temporarily. And basically what I want this field to do is to tell me, is this password correct? Okay, I need to know if this password is correct. So we can use a formula for that, but first let's define our table. Username and passwords, let's go ahead and define them. Okay, and we can define them, we'll call that user table. So we can just enter, I've highlighted the entire table, user table. Okay, and the next one we can define as username. So that's going to be E through 5 through 24. Okay, so let's go ahead and assign that a name. Okay, we're going to call that username. So basically we're referencing this table, and now we can use those references in a formula, so it makes it a lot easier and it's also clear. So the first thing we want to do is we want to use we'll use an index match, which is a very common formula combination to find specific variables. So what we want to do is we want to say index. Okay, well, what are we going to index? Okay, what are we going to? We're going to index the entire table first, so we're going to call that the user table. Okay, so we're going to index this entire table, user table. Okay, and now we have to specify a row number. Well, we want to know what row is the username on, and we want to know if that password's correct. Okay, so we're going to use match. What are we matching? We're going to look up James. Okay, and we're going to look it up in what array, what table? Well, we just created username, so username. So we can reference it. So that's the table, and the 0, we're going to use a 0 because we want an exact match. It's got to be match exactly. So we're going to use exact match, and then we're going to go ahead and close that with parentheses. Okay, and then we need to specify the column, right? Now remember, the column in this table, this is column 1 and this is column 2. So we're going to use column 2. Okay, column 2. Okay, so now we'll check it. Okay, so basically all it did is return the password. So basically what I want to say is, hey, if this password matches this password, it's right. Okay, and we can check that, and we simply have to add in an if statement there. So we can say if this value is equal to this entered password, then true. Otherwise false. Okay, and right now it's false, but if we change this to the actual password by changing this to a W, that'll change to true. So now we know we've got the correct password. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we want to define the user row. Okay, we want to know what is the row of the user, because we're going to need to use that row when VBA is going through. We can get that row in VBA, but I don't want to show you here in a formula too. So there's a few ways to do it, and we can do that basically with a match statement. Match, and then what are we matching? Where we're going to match James, and then what are we matching it with? We're going to look up the array username. Okay, and then also we want an exact match on that, so we'll go ahead and use that 0. And then remember, if we just enter that, it's going to enter 1, right? But we don't want 1. 1 is the first row in the table, which is correct, but it actually is the 5th row of the table, but it's the first row in the array. So we'll always want to add 4 to that. Okay, so plus 4 is going to give us the correct row in the table. And we also want, if it's wrong though, if it's wrong, I don't want an error message to show up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write if error, okay, and then go to the end. I'm just going to create an empty space, double quotes. So if there's an error, if it's wrong, I just want it to show up. I don't want to show an error here because I'm going to have VBA read this. So that way, if it's wrong, it'll just be blank. And when we write code in VBA, then we can test to see if it's blank or if it's not blank. So back into our VBA, we can continue with our macro that we're writing now. So what we'll do is now we've calculated a sheet, and the reason we've calculated in the VBA is because we want those formulas to make sure after the user has entered the username and the password, we want to make sure that sheet calculates so that both of these formulas can calculate. And now what I want to do in this macro is we're going to use this macro when the user presses OK on the login form. I want to test, okay, but I want to run two tests. One, I want to see if the username is correct. Two, I want to see if the password is correct. And we can do that with two if statements. The first of which is if dot range, okay, B8, remember that's our user row, B8 dot value equals empty. Remember, if there's any kind of an error, it's going to be empty. Then, okay, incorrect. I'm just going to make a comment, incorrect username, so we know. Then what do we want to do? Well, first I want to tell the user that it's not correct. Message box, okay, please enter a correct user name, okay? And then we're going to exit out of the sub. We want to exit it. We don't want to continue any further until they put in a correct username. So end if, okay? So we've got those two things happening if it's not. And now if the password is wrong, we want to write an additional if statement. If dot range, okay? And in this case, B7, remember, it's that true, right? We want to make sure this is true, right? B7. And if for some reason they entered an incorrect password, we'll get an error or we might get a false. So what we want to do is we just want to say if it's not true. In this case, if B7 does not equal true, right? So true is the only condition that we should continue on. If it's anything but true, we want to end it. Then incorrect password. Okay, in this case, message box, please enter a correct password. Okay, and exit sub. Okay, and if. Okay, so now we've got this. So let's go ahead and test this out and we'll just run it. Okay, no problem, no errors because we do have it correct. But what if we change this to, let's say James to a non-user, okay, and now we'll run it. Okay, please enter a correct username, good, okay. And now let's go ahead and enter an incorrect password. Okay, and we'll go ahead and run that and then make sure we get that. Please enter a correct password. Okay, great, so that's working well. And let's go ahead and put that as to a correct password. Now we can continue with our VBA. Now, if they get to this point, we know that they have entered everything correctly. So we can continue on at taking care of hiding or showing or locking or unlocking sheets. Okay, and to do that, we need to define, now we should define the row because we need to know what row we're going to be working on. So user row, remember we've dimensioned it up here, equals, right, B8, right, B8 here, okay, dot range B8, okay, dot value, that's the user row. All right, we want to make sure because that's really important. And then what we want to do basically is we know the row now, we want to run through every single one of these columns, and based on the icon here, we want to either show and unlock the sheet, we want to show and lock the sheet, or we may even want to hide the sheet completely. Okay, so those are the three conditions that we're going to test for now, and we're going to do that for each sheet in the workbook. So we can do that with a for next statement. And what we want to do is we're going to go through the columns, right? But we want to know what columns they are, right? So G is the all pages, so we don't need that. We're going to go through columns H through column M, okay? But I need to know what column it is. Equals, so just as this will help us to column, okay? This is going to tell them that this is column 8, okay? And if you drag this over there, we want to go through 8 from column 8 to column 13. Okay, so we want this macro to run through all of these columns. So we can do that with a for next statement, and we can start out for sheet column. Remember, we've defined sheet column up there. Column equals 8 to 13. Okay, and then next sheet column. All right, so now within this loop, all of our action of hiding or locking or unlocking is going to take place. The first thing we want to do is we want to define our sheet name. And I've done that through a formula here where we basically define the sheet names through this formula. And this formula that I've added basically takes whatever sheet name in A1 or A3, so if you change the sheet names, they'll automatically change too. Okay, and now you can see here in this the sheet name has changed, so that's going to help us. It's just this simple formula. Basically, it's going to take the sheet name of a specific cell for each of those things. So if you add more, it's very simple to add more columns and add more sheets just with this formula here. So I hope that'll help you out. So now that we know we're going to define the sheet names. Now these sheet names are in row 4, and we know the columns. Okay, so let's go ahead. So the first sheet name is going to be, let's go ahead and define that, sheet name equals, and in this case we're going to use dot cells. Normally we've been using dot range, but dot cells allows us to use a variable for both row and column. Right? In this we don't need because we know the column, it's B. But in this case, when we want variables for both cells and for both columns and rows, we'll use the cells option. So in this case, cells, we're going to start out with a row, user row, okay, because we know the user row, we've just defined it above. And what is the column? Sheet column, okay? Dot value, okay? And that basically that's going to tell us the sheet name. So what it's going to do is, on this loop, it's going to go 1, the sheet name is admin, remember, row 4, okay? And it's going to tell us, and we don't need, let me go ahead and change this, this should be a 4. So because we're just getting the sheet name, and the sheet name is only in row 4. So we've done that. Now what we can do is, now that we have the sheet name, we can go ahead and run our if statement. And we're going to run an if statement based on the type of security we have for that. So let's go ahead and write that code right now. If, okay, dot cells, okay, now we can enter the user row dot sheet column dot value, okay, equals, and then remember we have, okay, let's start out with that D. Okay, if it's unlocked, which is this D, if it's that, what do we want to happen? Well, in that case, we want to make sure that it's not protected, right? And we want to make sure then, okay, so we'll go ahead and write an end if. So we want to make sure it's not protected. So we'll go ahead and sheets, okay, sheet name. Remember, that's the sheet name that we're referencing. Dot, just, it may have been protected before, so we always want to make sure it's unprotected. In this case, unprotect. And then we'll just go ahead and we're going to use a password protect. We're going to use a password of, let's just say 123. Okay, so, and also it may have been hidden before. If another user, you know, when we open this workbook, we're going to have all of the worksheets hidden because it's important. We don't know if the user is going to have all the security rights, so it's important to hide them all in the beginning. So we want to make sure in this case that it is visible. So sheets, again, sheet, let me go ahead and spell that one above right, add another E there. Okay, sheet name dot, and in this case, visible, okay, equals XL sheet visible, okay? And what that's going to do is that's going to make our sheet visible, which is what we want, because if it has that D, it's going to be completely unlocked. Okay, so sheet name. So basically, if it's unlocked, we want to do two things. We want to unprotect it, and we want to make sure it's visible. Okay, but what if it's locked and visible? Okay, what if it's this one here? Okay, which is locked but visible. So we're going to copy that icon there. And then we're going to go back into the VBA code, and we're going to write some code that allows us to basically keep it visible but log it. So let's go ahead and paste that little I there, and then I'm going to copy and paste this code here, okay, and then copy that again, and I'm going to say basically in this case, if it's I, which is locked, I want to protect it, right? We want this protected and visible. Okay? Protected and visible. That's for our second condition. Now we have one more condition, okay? And that is we want to make sure that if it's the X, remember the X, right? That we don't want that visible at all. So we can write some code. If dot cells user row sheet column dot value equal X, and then in that case we can just make it very well hidden. So, and I'll explain the difference in that then, right? And then let's go ahead and copy that. And then in this case, we're not going to make it visible. We're going to actually make it very hidden. Okay, and I'll explain the difference to you. Very hidden. There's actually 3 states that a sheet can be. If it's, let's go ahead and in the admin screen, let's go into properties. Okay, if you look on this sheet, it's visible. Okay, you see our admin sheet's visible. But if we hide it, if we make it hidden, sheet hidden, okay, it's not there anymore. However, if I right click, drag it down so you can see a little bit. There we go. And so if you right click, you can see on anything that here it's unhide, right? And you can see it's right here. So anybody can unhide that sheet just by clicking unhide. Okay, but sometimes you don't want your users to be able to manually unhide sheets like that. So what we can do in that case is make it very hidden, and I'll show you how to do that. And in this case, we can make it very well hidden, very hidden. And when you right click on that, there won't be any way to unhide it. The only way you can unhide it is by going into the VBA directly, clicking on the sheets here, and then changing the properties here to visible. Okay, so in our case, for this, we probably want to make it sheet very hidden. Otherwise, it'll be too easy for a user to unhide it. So we wanted to make it sheet unhidden. So we'll go ahead and write some code for that, and we'll close out the properties now. And in this case, what we want to do is go back into the security here, and we want to make it very hidden. Okay, and that's the only, we don't need to worry about the password, although if you want, you can certainly protect it and make it hidden as well, so that would be no problem, but it's a bit overkill. So now we've written our code. Okay, now we can go back into our admin screen. Let's go ahead and unhide that and make that visible. Okay, we go back into our admin screen, and here we have our code. So if James and our password is correct, we're going to have it run through, and we can lock these. Let's go ahead and lock these. Okay, right now, right, you can see, you can click on these sheets, no problem, and review. Let me unprotect that, just so we can set that so that you can see how they're protected. And then so now you can fully select, and once we protect them, you can choose. It'll remember. So let's say we don't want a lock cell, so let's go ahead and unprotect that, but it will remember what you did before. So when we protect it with the password, it will also remember that we don't want to select the locked cells. Okay, so back into our admin. So basically, I want our admin to be editable, and and let's go ahead and hide sheet 4. All right, so let's go ahead and see how that works. Okay, pull up the VBA, and we'll go ahead and just click anywhere in here and click run the code. Okay, and it's been run, and now you see sheet 4 is gone. Okay, and sheet 3 has been protected. See how it's unprotected, and I cannot click anywhere in here, so that works good. And we have this is also protected with a password 123. That unprotects it, so that's working good as well. Okay, so our code is working good, and sheet 4 is gone. Now let's go ahead and make sheet 4 active and run our code again, and let's go ahead and see if that works. Okay, we just ran it, and there's sheet 4 again. All right, so that's working great. And now what we want to do is we want to work this in with our login security. So we'll do that now. And what we'll do is we'll create a user form to handle that for us. So back into our VBA and right click, and we will insert a user form. Okay, and we'll go ahead and give it a name into the properties, and we'll call this login form. And then we'll go ahead and give it a caption here, login form. Okay, and we'll change the background a little bit, give it a little bit of a look, a nicer look, and we'll go ahead and add some text to that. Let me expand this there. All right, bring that over. So we'll go ahead and add labels. So what we want is want a username, and we'll type that in here under username. That'll be the caption. Let's increase the font as well so that it'll make it easily readable. Say we go to 14 on this. Okay, and then we will make it right justified. Double clicking here twice. And let's go ahead and copy that, and we'll use a similar label for the password. Control C, Control V. Okay. And now let's go ahead and call this one password. Okay. And next up, what we want to do is we want to actually add in the label fields. We can do that here with a text box. So these are the fields for the labels. And let's give that a name also. We'll call it user name field. Okay. And let's also make that 14 so that it's similar as the others. Change the font. Okay. And we'll go ahead and copy that and paste that. And we're going to give that one as well a different name. And we'll call that password field. So let's go ahead and add that in. And now what we want to do is we want to link these fields with the fields in our workbook so that we always know where they're set. So let's go ahead and align these to the right, and then we'll go ahead and align these two. I'm using the control to select both of them, and the left. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to assign this field to this cell here, B5, and we can do that under the control source here, the control source. So we'll go ahead and type the page name admin, and then the exclamation mark, and then B5. Okay, once we've done that, James will appear, so we know it's linked properly. We'll do the same thing for here under for B6, admin B6. Okay, and then don't forget the exclamation mark there. If for some reason your page name has spaces, right, you'll want to add these quotation marks, these marks here to separate that. So that's very important if your sheet names have spaces. All right, so we've added that and we have them linked. That's great. Let's go ahead and add a button so that we can log in. And we'll go ahead and click on button, and then make a nice big OK button. We'll have the caption saying OK. We will also make this font size of 14. OK, and now what do we want? When we press OK, what do we want to do? Well, basically we want to run this macro here, right? We want to check the user. So all we need to do is copy and paste this. Okay, go back into the login form, double click on the OK, and paste it in. So when they press OK, we're going to basically check to see if that user. Okay, and that's all we have to do. Since we've already created the macro, we know that it's going to work right when the user is checked. All right, great. So that's it for the user form. And what we want to do is we want to show and hide this user form basically on login, right? However, when this workbook is closed, we want to actually hide all the sheets because we don't know if the user the new user is going to have access or not. So it's important that we hide all the sheets, and then based on the new user's rights that we show the sheets or not. And so what we want to do is we want to pick a default sheet, just one empty sheet to start on it. And so I've created a start sheet. There's nothing here, right? And what I want to happen is I want this sheet to appear when the workbook is opened, and then on top of that I want the user form to pop up. Okay, so to do that, what we'll do is we'll write a macro that basically hides all the sheets, and that except for the start. Okay, and we can do that with a very easy macro. Let's go ahead and write a macro for that, and we'll just call this close workbook because we want this to happen when the workbook is closed. So we'll just call it close workbook. Okay, and the first thing we want to do before hiding any other sheets is we can't hide a sheet unless if we're actually on it. So we want to go to the start. We want to activate. We want the user to go to the start. So we can do that, and the start, as you see, is sheet 6. I like to use the sheet numbers and not the sheet names because the sheet names tend to change. So sheet 6.activate. Okay, and all that's going to do is send us to sheet 6 and make it display. It's just going to display it. So that's fine. And then basically I want to write some code that I want to say for all the other sheets in the workbook, please hide them. Okay, so we can do that. First, let's dimension a worksheet, right? Worksheet as a worksheet, because we're going to go through every worksheet. So we want to make sure we dimension. And then we're going to write some code basically that says for every worksheet in the workbook, hide it, unless of course it's the start. We don't want to hide the start. Okay, so for each worksheet in this workbook dot worksheets, okay, for basically for every one, right? And then next worksheet. So everything we're going to write is in between there, and we want to say if the worksheet dot name does not equal start, right? We don't want to do this for start, okay? Then worksheet dot visible equals XL, and then in this case we're going to go very well hidden because we don't want them to easily unhide them. So we're going to run this code, okay? And when we run this code, it's going to basically hide everything except the start. So let's go ahead and save our work, as I always like to do, and then we're going to run that macro. Let's go ahead and run it. Okay, and you can see all the other sheets are not there except for the start. So we want that before the close to do that, because when the workbook is open, all we want them to see is this start screen. So that's going to help us. So now before the workbook closes, and also there's one more thing I like to do. There's often a prompt when you close a workbook. If changes are made, you're going to get a prompt saying, do you want to save this workbook? So what I always like to do is I always like to save the workbook after. So we'll write one other line of code that says this workbook dot save, okay? And that's just going to save it. So now we can copy and paste this code. We could have written this under the closed workbook as well, but I wanted everything on the same module for you as well. So we'll copy this closed workbook, and then under this workbook, right, we're going to put it in the workbook, and then not when it's open, but when it's closed, right? Before close, that's where we're going to paste it. Okay. On open, we do want some things to happen though. What do we want to happen? Well, it's pretty simple what we want to happen on open. We want to show the login form, right? We want to show the login form. So all we need to do is write in one line to say login form dot show, okay? And that'll change it to capitals just like we did. So basically when we open the workbook, this is going to show. Okay, great. So we can run that, and you see when we run that, it shows the password, and click OK. Perfect. And you see how that worked? The only thing we need to do is we need to close this form on the successful registration. We need to close this form. So we can do that through the macro as well. And all we need to do is go into the macro, and this is the check user macro. So remember, after everything is done, okay, we can, after they've passed the 2 tests, incorrect username and incorrect password, after they've passed those two tests, we know they're good. So we can do login form.hide. Okay, and that's going to hide the form. So perfect. So that'll hide the form because they've already passed those two tests. And one also very important code that you'll want to write is you want to clear out the username and password after it's been hidden so that they don't show up next time. Under the admin screen, and we can go ahead and take a look and pull up our code. And basically what we want to do is we want to clear out cells B5 and B6. So we can do that here. Dot range B5 comma B6 dot clear contents. Okay, and that's going to clear out both the username and the password. There may be times when you want to keep the last username. If that's the case, just clear out B6 only and not B5. Then it'll remember the username. So that's also a very important thing that we want to add as well. However, for your purposes, in the workbook that I'm going to get you, I don't want you to have to worry about the login screen when you first receive the workbook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this workbook, and I'm going to put an apostrophe before that and put an apostrophe before that. That means those macros are not going to run. Okay, they're not going to run because I want you to see the workbook. I want you to play with it. I want you to learn it. I don't want you to have to worry about the login. If you're like me, you will forget the password always. So all you have to do, let's say you're on the start screen and there's no sheets and you forget the password. You're like, oh boy. Okay, so all you have to do is go into VBA, go into the Visual Basic, and then just click on any sheet like admin and click on the properties, and then go ahead and make the sheet visible here. Okay, however, there's one other level of protection that's very important, and that's VBA protection. And this password you do not want to forget. Okay, there's a way to protect VBA by right clicking on the project, going into VBA properties, and going into protection, and you can set a password here, but please do not forget that. This will lock VBA, okay? And nobody will be up. It's an important level of security, but don't forget, I can't help you if you forget the password. So make sure if you do set a password here, you remember it. And that's an important step because otherwise people can get into your workbook and get into your code. So if you want a higher level of protection, set your workbook password here. All right, I hope that helps you. I think we've had a great. You can also hide these columns here on your admin, as we always do. We put them in gray so that you can have a great workbook. And I hope this helps. Please like, please share, and I thank you for all of your support. You're really helping me out and giving me a lot of motivation. Thank you so much. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and select the Send Me All Notifications options so that you can get our videos to you right away as soon as we create them.